Brought to you by Sunkissed Ester C, Soft Chews Vitamin C Supplement. A delicious, chewy way to get vitamin C that helps maintain healthy bones and teeth.
This moment brought to you by Harmony Airways.
Today in Studio 4, we get a fascinating introduction to the largest and most comprehensive collection of Haida art ever assembled in BC. The collection is a 2-year odyssey filled with mystery, history, and shining work from First Nations people who don't even have a word in their native language for art. And to begin, he is a highly educated educator and Hall of Fame teacher who thinks imagination is the most overlooked part of education. Good test takers who follow canned curriculums and spew out pat answers are not his idea of how to grow a well-rounded student. Innovative classroom teacher Alan Haskvitz says knowledge is what you already know. Imagination is what makes it grow. He's next. Lifelong learner Alan Haskvitz has been educating kids for 30-some years. He's taught at every grade level and on every core subject. His methods are not traditional, and he does not stuff his students full of facts. Some say his teaching ways are lofty and a bit impractical, but his teaching ways get excellent results. Haskvitz is in the National Teachers Hall of Fame in the United States. He is the developer of Reach Every Child, and he is in Vancouver for the Imagination in Education Conference. It is my pleasure to welcome Alan Haskvitz to Studio 4 to tell us more.
Thank
Hello.
you. Appreciate being here, and thanks for doing some reading and bringing education into the program.
Lifelong learner, I call you. I assume you are.
Oh, for sure. Can't get enough of it. And that's where you get your ideas by the kids teach you. And that's what makes it so fun to be a teacher.
Why did you pick teaching?
Actually, I started in the business world, and I was quite successful. And then it dawned on me that everything that they were interested in was dollar signs. And I sort of thought, well, there must be something more that you can give society, that how much money, how big a house you have. And so I went back to school and re-educated myself and dropped a lucrative position to become a teacher. And then I started teaching in the United States, and then I taught in Newfoundland, in Ontario, just always getting ideas from the people. And then ultimately ended in California because there was a teacher shortage at the time. And my heart's still in Vancouver.
It is?
Yes, along with my wallet. Never mind.
Well, there's a Gulf Island or two around here. Maybe you could
swim to it.
Swim to it, build a cottage, do something. Is there a teacher you remember in your early years who inspired you?
Besides the Socrates we were talking about?
Yes,
okay.
that. Socrates, he was pretty good.
Yeah.
But
Well,
someone, grade 3, grade 4?
Basically, there's a difference between your favorite teacher and the best teacher. Your favorite teacher might do something for you that helped you, that spurred you on. But your best teacher is the one that gives you the things that you need to progress in life. And I still get letters 30, 35 years afterwards from students who did not understand at the time what I was doing, but later on did it. So my best teacher was in the 5th grade. And what he did was give you freedom to explore. And I think if teachers let go a little bit and let the kids explore, not be noisy in the classroom, but explore their interest. And to help with that, I created a website called reacheverychild.com. And on Reach Every Child, there's 10,000 resources for free for parents and kids and teachers. And for example, this summer, let's say they're bored, and a kid told me this, what's the last thing that goes through butterfly's mind when it hits the windshield? Well, it's its rear end.
I guess so.
But I said...
Unless he flies backwards.
Yeah. So I said, well, is it really his rear end? And so we went to his site, and they learned all the parts of the butterfly. So you take these teachable moments, these jokes, and whatever it is, and you can turn it into learning. And so if you go on Reach Every Child, there's butterfly information from. Also current events. Kids always come, they're always interested in what's happening in life. Well, I have a site right now that has all the events that are happening all over the world right up to the minute. Totally.
Terrorism events, wars,
Fires.
happy events, fires,
Yep.
sad events.
Exactly, and it's right there now, Reach Every Child. Actually, the news people probably be interested in that site right now because it would keep them quickly abreast of what's happening. But the kids come in and they're excited about something. For example, in the past, there was a General Noriega in Panama, and maybe some of your viewers recall that. Well, my students wrote him a letter in prison,
Noriega?
asked for his point of view because they were interested, and I had Spanish-speaking kids. So I said, well, he's Spanish, so write it in Spanish. Now, I don't read Spanish, so I hope they wrote something good, but you know, okay. You can just deny it. I don't know how it got
Yeah,
there.
nada.
Just don't put your name on a return address. Anyway, to make a long story short, he wrote back.
He did.
And then we sent the reply to Bush, the president at the time.
George First Bush?
First Bush, yeah. And what happened was he sent a letter back, and one of the gang-type leaders that I have in class got up and started to read it to the class and said, this is a bunch of bull.
Really?
Yep.
Now, did George Bush Sr. write a personal note?
No, he
or
sent
was it a generic, thank you for
generic
writing the
thank
White
you.
House?
Yeah, exactly. And when the kids saw that he wasn't answering a question, they learned something, that just because somebody has a title, it doesn't mean they're right. So you want to teach a child to be skeptical, not cynical, and so they don't get taken in by people. So that's what's so cool.
You are going to be involved in a conference tomorrow, putting the I in imagination.
Yeah.
What does that mean, the I in imagination?
Well, everything in this room, everything that you see was invented by somebody who took something and said, I have a better idea. And a lot of times teachers don't look at that. They just teach what is in the textbook. They don't go beyond. And if they put themselves in with a little flexibility, they can create the most interesting things. For example, one of the things I did was the kids were coming in and they said, my mother had a baby. Okay, so I go, that's a teachable moment. So we went and we made a newspaper up of all the things that happened on the day that baby was born. So they were doing stocks and learning how to read stock marks. They were doing the weather report. They were doing like when the moon rose and set, all these things that were way off. And then they wrote a haiku poem to that mother, and they created this newsletter and sent it to her. And then we contacted local hospitals, and now every day, well, almost every day, every school day, we send it out, fax it to the local hospitals, and they duplicate it and put it in the bags of newborn mothers when they go home. So they have a little copy of what happened, the news events, the sports events, everything. And meanwhile, the kids are learning how to read a newspaper.
I like that. On the day you were born, this is what happened.
And they keep it forever. And it's really interesting because it says like, welcome newcomer of the class of, let's say, 2024. Because, like in the future, and the parent sees that, and she's going to say, that's when my child's going to graduate from high school. And it's sort of to stimulate thinking. And they do that in the local newspaper, again, putting the eye in imagination. You go, you cast down your bucket, use the resources, you find yourself with free newspapers. We get free newspapers now.
Gotta like that.
Yep.
In an information age, when our kids are bombarded with many things, many television shows, access to so much information, how do you pique their interest? How do you hook them?
Well, the kids essentially, I'm teaching middle school now, and it's not so much in elementary school, but are naturally sort of negative. So you turn negatives to positives. They were watching a custodian watering down a tennis court during a water shortage. Why is he doing that? How come? They went to the water district. You just turn this negativism, and they ended up passing legislation that said you can't do that anymore.
You're growing young activists.
Yeah, that's it. And they don't take no for an answer. They go to city council meetings. If I was in Vancouver now, to give you an idea what can be done, if you go online to the registration for voting in British Columbia, and I'll be talking about that tomorrow. I'll be giving a speech on Thursday at the Imagination Conference, which is really worthwhile. Simon Fraser is so far ahead of other universities when it comes to putting imagination in the classroom. It's just incredible. But to give you an idea, what happened was, with this legislation that they did, they pushed it all the way to the top, and then when they got to BC, and they started expanding, They found out that if you register to vote in British Columbia, you have to read above a 12th grade average.
If you register to vote?
If you go through the forms, they're written at above a 12th grade average. Well, my students saw that in California, called up to the Secretary of State and said, which is in charge of the person who does the voting, and said, these are too difficult here, use these, and they did. So now the state of California voting registration forms are simplified, and in addition to that, the voter registration forms are simplified. And hopefully maybe somebody in British Columbia can say, hey, you know, this is grade 12 plus. I don't know what the average voter, maybe someone who's an immigrant comes in that can vote legally, what it is.
And there's a language barrier?
A language
often?
barrier. And there is.
We are debating whether or not to have a new soccer stadium on the water. It passed council last night. It didn't pass, but the concept passed that they can continue to explore it. If you were teaching in a Vancouver classroom, I'm sure you'd have your kids on it.
Oh, we'd have been on it a long time ago.
A long time. Where is it? Well, where should it be? Is it a good idea, bad idea? Looking at world football, all of that, World Cup. I mean, billions were tuned to the World Cup. Yeah. So wouldn't it make sense in school, somehow the kids are talking about it in the classroom and finding some teachable moments?
Oh, to give you an idea, my students actually created a website in the United States that allows you to compare any two cities, tax bases, library books, sexual offenders, all these things. So you go to this site and you put in your two cities and you go to and you can compare them. My students made 35 graphs comparing their city. Then we went to city council and said, this is how we rate. See, Vancouver doesn't know how other cities the same size are doing in Canada or a similar size, because they don't have somebody to hire. My students did that. A number of library books in Vancouver, the same as in Toronto, per person.
Do you get flack from parents?
Parents who want their students to get a good grade and fill in the blanks, and they're proud of their students because their student has a good memory. You get flack from those, and they would rather have their kid in other classes. I'm going, you got the data, now what are you going to do? Like an encyclopedia has all the answers, but what are you going to do with those answers? It's the imagination that turns them into something. So it's the prove it.
What did Albert Einstein say about imagination? True sign of intelligence.
No, he essentially said that
knowledge.
It's all encompassing. You know, imagination is more important than intelligence because it's all encompassing. So that's why I expect a lot of world leaders to be at the conference tomorrow. Oh, maybe not, because it's not by a golf course, but anyway.
But speaking of golf, wouldn't you talk to your kids about golf and Tiger and...
No, we don't do that because that's...
you don't?
Well, we do it because I have a lot of students who are all going to be professional athletes. They don't have to go to school, they're going to be professional athletes. So we do a study of the early death rate of professional football players. We do how much they really earn, how many, you know, that we can, all the data we can find. So if you do the statistics, I think there's less than 10,000 professional athletes in the whole world. So when you start to do that, they start to say, well, you know.
What are my chances?
Yeah. And I'm actually, the kids that are hard to motivate, difficult to motivate, that like sports, I have them invent games. And they go out and they invent the game. So if you're a PE teacher or something, instead of playing the traditional games, I try to have them invent their own games.
Right.
To give you an idea, about 1970, I was teaching in Cornwall, Ontario, and we did a study, and we found out that, except for basketball, most of the games that are taught in school have no cardiovascular benefits. A goalie in hockey or soccer really isn't real active, you know, and so we reinvented games, and the Canadian Cricket Association told us how to play continuous cricket. It's